All right. It's been, a year and a half? Maybe 2 years, maybe 2 whole years since I've uploaded video on this channel. And it's not because I'm gone or that I'm dead or any of the myriad other reasons people don't post to YouTube. It just didn't happen for 2 years. Sometimes it just doesn't happen for 2 years. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. But we're back. And I'm making no promises. No promises this time around. Really freeing in that way. I just felt like I wanted to put more stuff on YouTube, and I like videos. I like talking to people, and trying not to be in a self-absorbed way. Do I think I have things that I know that are worth other people knowing? Yeah, that's being a human, right? If I didn't know anything that I thought you should also know, I guess step one would be go learn something useful, right? We should all know things that we think are worth knowing. But I don't know. There's a lot of things. I enjoy the format of YouTube. I had more than one person tell me that they missed the videos. They missed listening to me talk about things. And it's one of those things where I'm a teacher, and so my schedule is very regular, but also really irregular at the same time. And I don't know how to describe that to someone who's never been a teacher. Maybe it's every job. And the only job I've ever held that wasn't hourly, scheduled at all sorts of weird times, is being a teacher. So maybe just how everyone's is. I don't know. I'm going to try not to say things I don't know. It's great advice from a character in a thing that we'll talk about today, actually. In any case, more than one person asked me if I'd do videos again. More than one person asked me if I'd do philosophy, specifically videos again. And shout out to those of you who want this. I guess if you don't want this, you haven't watched this much of the video, because I'm doing bad things if I wanted to hit the YouTube algorithm. I haven't talked about the topic at all. It's been way too long. I'm supposed to have the topic out in the first 15 seconds, or people look away. Well, it's been 3 minutes, so I guess you're dealing with me fairly well. In any case, here's what I'd like to chat about today. So a thing that's changed in my life since I last put a video up is that I direct plays now at the high school that I work at. And so I'm learning how to direct plays now at the high school that I work at. And I'm also going to be teaching an acting class, which I love acting. And I had the distinct privilege of being very generously allowed to what started out as me offering to help the director last year. And it turned into, through their wild generosity, that I was effectively the assistant director. And I learned so much. And I'm very excited to bring that knowledge into my year now directing. So it'll be great. In any case, what I want to talk about today is theater, is stories, art, these sorts of things, and just kind of noodle around, I guess, in my own thoughts of why does theater work? Why do stories work? Why do they do what they do? Why do they do what we want them to do? And just to I don't know, tell you what I think and see if hopefully that helps you think, and then we can all be thinking. And that'll be good. Thinking's great. So my fridge is making those noises that, appliances make. In any case, I was thinking about this the other day, which is how I start way too many sentences, but I think about this a lot, why stories work and why we care. And I like to think about the fact that so here's your fancy big word, verisimilitude, which means just something being similar to reality. And I was talking to someone who, should I name drop? I don't know if I'll name drop. I wasn't really talking to them. I was a guest in their chat while they were streaming on Twitch, and they are very good at talking about acting and talking about role playing and those sorts of things. And the discussion we were having was about Dungeons and Dragons. And we were talking about, he was talking about this thing and I was in the chat, of course, listening. I made a couple comments and that was it. But he was talking about, and this is something he talks about regularly, is verisimilitude. The idea that if you're running a role-playing game or if you're doing something, if you're storytelling, I'll make it storytelling because everyone's experienced that more or less. It's your job as a storyteller to convince your audience that the story is real. And I am reminded also of a quote from an author in a book who said, in the part of the book where they say, the characters aren't based on real characters, and I made all this, basically. His opening of his book sticks in my mind as one of the best ways of expressing this. He said, if anything in this book resembles real people in real places, you shouldn't be shocked because the only people I know are real people and the only places I've been are real places. And I'm not trying to tell a story that factually happened. I'm just trying to tell you a story that I made up. It's all fiction. And to suggest that the only story I could tell is a story that actually happened is to rob stories really of their power, because it's kind of the foundational assumption of our species that fictional stories matter, that the stories we tell are meaningful, even though they didn't happen. And so if you're reading this book and you're surprised that it's fictional, I don't know what to tell you. It is fictional, but that doesn't mean it doesn't matter. And these sorts of things. And I remember also especially the way Aristotle talks about tragedy in his book, The Poetics, where he says the point of tragedy is to elicit two specific emotions, pity and fear. We'll talk about that here in a second. But this idea of verisimilitude, this idea that the story didn't happen, but now it's happening. The idea that the story is not real, but it is true. The idea that it reveals true things. In a sense, a story is like a very good mirror because it shows us real things without itself being real. Just like a mirror, when you look at yourself in a mirror, you're not really looking at yourself. You're looking at a mirror. The mirror has now started to look like you because of the way it reflects light. And it isn't you, but it does tell you true things about you. And a story is like a mirror in that way, except that it's not as obvious because it's not telling you physical things about you. It's telling you immaterial things about you. And that's both more fun and scarier. Because if you look at a mirror and you don't like what you see, at a certain point, it is just your physical appearance. It doesn't really matter what you look like, really. But if you hear a story and you don't like what you hear, you don't like the you portrayed in the story, if it's a true you being reflected back to you, that's much scarier because that's more you-ish, right? The inner you, the real you inside you don't want there to be things wrong with that. And so hearing about it is hard. And the way, and so this verisimilitude, this idea that it reflects reality, is really important. And so a story that doesn't reflect reality, a story that gets reality wrong and doesn't portray true things, yeah, it's a bad story. You know, we can talk about, are there good stories, are there bad stories? And the answer is, yeah, I think so. I think this idea of whether or not it reflects reality, truth. Now, fiction, nonfiction, I'm going to leave totally out of the equation. I'm going to distinguish between fact and truth. Fact being sort of what happened. Truth being what's going on, maybe why it happened, or sort of these eternal realities. So a particular court case is a fact. Justice is a truth, is a reality. And so a story doesn't have to portray facts. But if it twists truth, if it twists reality, that's a problem. That's a bad story. And so we can think about our favorite stories, the ones that we love, the ones that have affected us deeply, that we still think about, despite the fact that they never happened. The characters in stories that we remember and relate to and love, you know, in some way, they're not a real person, and they're not an existent factual person, but there's a sense in which we do love them because we love the truth that they're revealing to us. We love the reality that they point to. We love seeing them in real people, and then loving those real people because now we recognize in them a truth. I think of one of my favorite book series, the Clan of the Cave Bear series, and there's so many characters in that book series that are all over the place. Good, bad, you know, all kinds of stuff. And qualities in them that I really deeply admire in these, you know, fictional characters. And seeing those, really digging deep into those characters has helped me to see those qualities in other people, in real people, and to love them for it and to admire them for it too. And I think to myself, oh, you're kind of like, and it's this fictional character. And it's easier that way because the fictional character is sort of on display. The point of the story is to tell you about this person. Real people don't live their lives on display, trying to reveal to you their inner workings and their admirable qualities and their unadmirable qualities. No, they're just living their life. And that's one of the powers of a story, is that I can display these things. I can tell you what a character's thinking. I can tell you how a character got to where they are. I can tell you how someone is reacting to what's going on around them in a way that really shows you, oh, and it opens your eyes and you go, oh, I get it now. I see why you might have done that. And then we turn and see real people and we think to ourselves, oh, I think I get why you do that now. That makes sense. Or we learn what kinds of questions to ask people when we have a relationship with them that allows us to go deeper and to ask deeper questions and say, well, I want to know I want to know why you do these things. I want to get you, in a sense. And we can see in a character, oh, well, so I've seen someone, fake person, but I've seen someone go like this or stuff like that. And we can kind of understand their answers. We watch people think differently than we do. And we can bring that into our own lives and how that affects how we deal with real people. Or emotions in story. I mean, there's several points in several of my favorite books that I can't read without getting very emotional about it. And there's a sense in which you get lost in the story. And it's hard to describe the fact that there are these characters that I do deeply love. And there's a tendency, I suppose, for that to be a problem if you loved fictional characters and then didn't love real people. That's a problem. That would be, point, sort of unjustly abstracting what's going on. But it reminds me of something Dostoevsky wrote, where there's a character in The Brothers Karamazov who says, "The more I love humanity, the less I love people that I meet." Because it's really easy to love an abstract thing, because an abstract thing can't hurt you in the same way. An abstract thing can't disappoint you in the same way. Or at least if it is disappointing, you can just put it down. People are tough. People are tough to deal with. We're all tough to deal with because we are disappointing. We disappoint each other all the time. And we need love. In a way, an abstract concept, it's kind of like when a little kid gets a puppy for the first time and they want all the good things out of it, but they don't want to put in the work and take care of it. Totally get it. I mean, the people are more than that. People are like that in a little bit, where we like to get the parts out of a person that we enjoy. And if a person becomes difficult to love or difficult to enjoy, we like to put them down. And that's not good. It's not acceptable. Even with a dog, that's not acceptable. Like with a toy, that's fine, because a toy is just a lump of, inanimate stuff. Like whatever, treat it however you need to. But a dog has emotions. A dog's got an animal soul, and they deserve better. They actually can deserve, in a way, that like a rock can't, or a toy choo-choo train can't. But a person's on an even a whole nother level of deserving of love and these sorts of things. And so we don't want to get lost in a story and say, why I love people all the time, and then honestly the only people you love are fake. But these characters that we do deeply love, and we do deeply have emotional attachments to, and we in a sense we truly wish the best for these characters that are made up. It allows us, if we are open to it, it allows us to then look around at the real people in our lives and to love them, to associate the hardships that we've seen on display in a story. We can now see those in real life and respond to it appropriately, to love characters. We admire people for their good qualities. We try to emulate these fictional characters, and we become better real people. And that's fascinating and powerful, and I think something we take for granted, but it's good to think about it. To circle back onto that tragedy, when Aristotle talks about tragedy's purpose is to elicit pity and fear, he explains what he means is we pity. So a tragedy, obviously someone's doing fine and then they're not doing fine. We pity them. We look at someone who's not us, and we see bad things happening to them, and we have an emotional response. And the correct emotional response is pity, to feel bad for them, to lament the evil happening to them, and to wish it hadn't happened, and to want it to reverse and become good again. That's what we see. He said the power of tragedy really, though, in the sense that it gives us a safe space to feel pity. It gives us a space where we can feel pity without something bad actually happening to someone else. So pity is a good emotion for a human to be able to feel. Pity is good for us to be able to do to real people. But in order to feel pity for a real person, something bad has to happen to them, and that's not good. We don't want that to happen. And so tragedy gives us a place where we can get training in pity without having to hurt people. We can get training in pity without real people having to get hurt, for us to have pity on them. Fear, though. Fear is a different emotion, and fear is like pity, or we can say the way Aristotle means fear here is he means pity for the self, pity for the future self. Is when we watch tragedy, we see these bad things happen to people. Some of it's not their fault. Some of it is their fault. It almost always has to do with an error of judgment, where they just didn't have enough knowledge and they just made a poor decision. And then things get out of control. Fear is when we realize that they're just normal people like us, or I guess more specifically, that we're just normal people like they are, and you never know. It could be tomorrow that you watch your own tragedy happen. It could be the next week. It could be later today. It could be in a couple years. You never really know. No character woke up in a Greek tragedy thinking, oh, today's the day it all goes downhill. Every character enters Greek tragedy thinking, well, today's a day that I'm going to do what I can, and we'll see what happens. And it just so happens that we watch the day it all falls apart. But everyone has eventually a day where it all falls apart. And if we don't know how to handle it, if we don't know what pity is, we don't know how to pity someone well, then we're not going to pity ourselves well. And if we don't know that bad things are going to happen, they hit harder. When you can prepare for it, then you can deal with it better. And fear, properly felt, fear for the future is to say, oh, well, I know, in a sense, it's just to say, I know that one day something bad is going to happen. That's all fear has to be. And we don't want it to be debilitating, but we need to have it. We need to know that bad things are going to happen. Ignatius of Loyola, in his Rules for the Discernment of Spirits, talks about when you're in consolation, when things are going well and you feel connected to God and the universe and all of creation and things are good and you're joyful and you're making progress, one of the most important things you can do is remember that that's not forever. That you're going to feel bad again. There's going to come a day where you don't feel close to God, when you don't feel like you love your spouse, when you don't get the job that you were hoping you were going to get, or or a real tragedy happens and someone dies that you love and you were not expecting. I mean, those things happen, and they happen frequently, that we go through, ups and downs. And then one of the most important things you can do while you're up is to remember that one day you'll be down again, and to be ready for that, to prepare for that. He talks about drinking water from the oasis, because eventually the desert shows up and you're going to die in it if you aren't prepared. And he says, conversely, in the downs, one of the most important things you can do is remember that that's not forever either. You'll come back up. There will be good things happening, and there will be good, a sense of connection and things, though that'll come back. And to not make decisions based on sort of just our emotional state. But to let those emotions teach us, to learn from them, and to learn to see these patterns, learn to see these things in our lives, and we can make rational thoughts from there. I was thinking then, so tragedy's got pity and fear. I was thinking, classic stuff is more of what I know. And as far as theater goes, I know tragedy, comedy. I'm looking forward to learning more about modern staging and modern writing, and how the genres have really changed. I mean, really, I know classical world, and I don't know modern theater super well at all. But I'm excited to learn. I'm excited to learn because it's necessary to know those things. If I'm going to teach acting and I'm going to direct plays, I need to know what's going on now, not just what went on hundreds of years ago. But as far as comedy goes, I was thinking, well, what does comedy do? Because Aristotle doesn't treat comedy very closely in that. And I thought, well, what might it do? What do you do in a comedy? You laugh at the people. Things aren't serious, and you ridicule them. That's what you do in comedy, is it lets you ridicule without anyone getting hurt, right? Just like I can pity someone in tragedy, but no one actually got hurt. I can ridicule someone for being a buffoon, but no one has to actually be a buffoon and be really ridiculed. And it's a sense of lightness. And what's the good emotion that's coming out of this? And I think it's compassion. When we see someone going through something that makes them look dumb, that makes them look silly, and we learn in a comedy that it's all right. Sometimes you look dumb and it's fine, and we get over it. And we forgive the actors of comedy for being buffoons. And we learn how to see someone sort of on display being foolish and making mistakes and forgiving them for it and just moving on. And then, like with tragedy, to say, oh, okay, well, then there's future me. Future me is going to make foolish things. Past me has done foolish things. And it's okay. And I can learn how to forgive myself. I can learn how to say, oh yeah, mistakes happen and it's fine. And we move on. And we learn how to move on. We learn how to learn from those things. So, okay, well, next time I'll do better. And it's okay, because there's going to be a next time. There's going to be a next time. I'll get another shot at doing stuff. And really, life does go on after something embarrassing, you know? At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. It might make your physical life more difficult. I mean, these things happen. But as far as, you know, social faux pas and stuff, you don't become a bad person for doing it, and you deserve to be forgiven for errors and things like that. And so I think that's what comedy really does a good job for us, is to point out when something's foolish or idiotic, or just immature and these sorts of things. And we see it. And I think maybe we learn when it's worth brushing off. And I guess maybe when it's serious, and when we see a comedy and we think to ourselves, oh, that's not actually funny. Oh, this was supposed to be funny. And now this person's done something real bad. And that's someone using comedy very well to say, oh, yeah, you just blow it off. No, you don't just blow that one off. No. That one's bad. We got to do something about that. And that gives you sort of real power. That's one of the things I like about Aristophanes in Athens, the real democracy in Athens. And at one point, he had to defend himself because he'd make fun of the local politicians viciously in his comedies. They're like sitting in the audience, and he'd be like, that guy, the worst, terrible, got tens of thousands of people killed. What a terrible, stupid guy. Well, can you just say that about politicians? And Aristophanes defended himself by saying, absolutely I can. Look, if I'm not allowed to do that, you don't live in a democracy. The day you cannot make fun of your government is the day you don't live in a democracy. Put me on trial, exile me for ridiculing politicians, and just know that you have sealed yourselves into a tyranny. I am democracy. And it was a really good speech. I mean, he doesn't get exiled. Everyone's just kind of like, yeah, that makes sense. And there's something in that where comedy points out errors. Comedy points out things that are bad and again, in kind of a safe environment where we learn how to recognize errors. We learn how to say, oh, yeah, okay, that's not good. That leads bad places. So when in real life, you're in a situation that's leading towards that, you can say, no, I've seen this before. And that can really help us with that. And I guess the other thing that brings up is there's a saying that I really like. They won't remember what you told them, but they will remember how you made them feel. And I think about that a lot, especially as a teacher, because I'm in the business of telling people things. And what I need to keep in mind, I think, more often is I am in the business of telling people things, which means I also need to be in the business of making people feel things. And it is important that I make my classroom engaging, that I make the things I'm telling them, if I think they're really important and the students should learn them, then I need to make them learnable. And the students have a responsibility, on the other hand, to be docile, to be teachable, to be willing to listen, to be willing to learn. Even when I fail, or intentionally, don't try to make something particularly, maybe particularly fun that day or something like that. There's real work. But there is a goodwill on my side to say, yeah, no, I know it's hard. It's hard to learn things when they're not fun and they're not engaging and they don't seem important. So let me try and tell you how this is fun, engaging, and important, and let's work on that. And I think theater really does a good job of that, because you can go to a play that's real preachy, and the play is just like telling you things. And it's kind of like getting a lecture instead of going and seeing a play. Nobody likes that. It turns out no one likes that. No one likes getting lectured to when they went somewhere to be entertained. And I think that's one of the things a playwright and an actor and a director and all these people involved in entertainment need to make sure they remember, is that the people didn't pay to attend a lecture if they came to a play. If they wanted to see a lecture, they would have signed up for a lecture, but they came to see a play. They came to feel, and they came to experience something. They didn't come to learn. That happens, I think, afterwards. It's not that you're hiding a lesson in a play. It's that just knowing the genre of a play is your job is to show people something happening and to elicit emotions, to elicit, in a sense, the correct emotions out of them. I think it's telling. Philosopher Aristotle does not say that tragedy's job is to teach people. No. It's to make people feel pity and fear. It's to engage the senses and the emotions. And then afterwards, after people have now experienced that, they take it home and they keep mulling on it. And I think there's a sense in which it's good to make available that kind of stuff where we engage in media and then we engage with each other and we try to think through it. And now that I've felt all of these things, what do I do with that next? How do I rationally engage with that? And I don't know the best way to do that. Some places have just shown plays or movies or things like that, and then had a forum, had a place where you could go and talk about it. I don't know if that's the average experience people are signing up for. I've thought about it myself because we have two plays at the school that I work at in the fall. We have our fall play and then our one act. And the one act is obviously one act. It's real short. And so if we want to invite people to come see that, 30 minutes maximum time on stage is not a full evening, And what do you do with that? And the answer is I don't really know what we're going to do with that. But I'd like to do something. And I don't know, is it the play that we're doing this year is called 1,000 Cranes, and it's a story about a girl who dies of leukemia after the Hiroshima bombing. There's a lot of stuff to talk about in this play. And I want to do that for people. I want to give that to people. I want people to have the opportunity to talk about this play. And I don't know how to communicate that necessarily. How to set that up, how to make that, how to make that inviting, how to make that sound like the kind of thing you'd want to go to. Because again, they came to see a play. They did not come to get lectured to. But I want the play to do its job. And part of that is just doing the play well. But I wonder if part of it is giving people the opportunity to engage with it when it's done, to engage with it on the next level. And I don't know what to do with that. Maybe it doesn't happen this year. Maybe it's a future problem. Maybe it's a future thing that we deal with. Maybe this year I just learn how to direct a play really well. But that's a thing. That's a real thing, is looking at that. And I think, we could talk about actors and actors spend so much time. An audience member sees this play once. Actors chew on this play for weeks minimum. And that's where some real transformation of thinking happens. That's where some real engagement with it goes. If you've never acted in a play before, I recommend to somehow getting the opportunity to work through something like that. Maybe you don't enjoy it, and that's fine. Not everything we do is enjoyable. Hopefully there's a play out there that you at least like. But being able to, and not just reading through it once out loud, not just like a reading group necessarily, oh, that's good. But like act it out. Sit down as a group and say, how do we make sense of this? How do we get this on stage? Yeah, that line's tough. And sometimes we, if we read a play and we find a line that's tough, we don't know what to do with it. We just say, I guess that line's tough, and we move on. Actors don't have that option. They can't just say, oh, I guess that line's tough and move on. They have to sell that line to the audience in a few weeks. They have to make sure that line isn't tough, for them at least. They have to make sure that that line makes sense and that what it's conveying is conveyed. And so you really wrestle with a play when you're reading through it and you're thinking about directing it, or you're acting it, or you're making the props for it. You have to read through and say, well, what are they holding and when do they, Those are all questions that you don't, as an audience member, you don't appreciate as easily because you're not involved in the process of thinking through it. We appreciate things when we've thought through them. Any math problem that I have personally solved, I get. Watching someone solve a math problem is, I think, engaging. I enjoy it. But I get it's not, it's because I have a sort of natural interest in it. But just watching someone solve a problem is not necessarily that we don't appreciate very much how hard it is. We watch someone who's really good at something like the Olympics. We watch the people in the Olympics and we clap for the gold medal, but no one claps for gold medals like athletes do. Someone else who appreciates the hard work that goes into being really good at something. No one applauds like they do because they get it in a way that the rest of us don't. And so when we see a play put on that's really good, we appreciate it to a certain degree. But unless you've worked on a play, you don't necessarily get it. Even I love our stage crew. I love the work they do. I love that they give us a set and costumes and makeup and all the things. And it's wonderful. And I know that I don't appreciate them enough because I've never done that before. I've watched them do it. I've helped here or there, but I've never sat down and really put in the hours of work and mental thought of like, how do I make this work? How do I build what this director has asked me to build cheaply but effectively and on time? Like, those are real problems that someone else has to deal with, and I appreciate them for that. But I know that I would appreciate them more if I had done it. And so I think, an audience member seeing a play, there's a sense of the play has a power there because it elicits those things. But even more so for an actor or someone who really digs deep into a play or something like that, or even just a story, someone that digs deep into a story and says, yeah, how do we deal with this really? You appreciate it a lot more because you've put in the work for it. And since you kind of deserve it a little bit more. Anyone who's ever tried to write a good story, yeah, you get that's tough. There's a lot of time that goes into that. What was it? I was thinking the other day, like an artist, we ask, someone gets asked for a logo to be designed or something, and we say, oh, well, they do some doodly-doo. It takes them about an hour, and we think, oh, wow, that looks great. How much is it? And they're like, well, it's $50 per hour. And we're like, whoa. All you did was, it was you did all this 1 hour. And it's like, yeah, I spent years becoming the kind of person who can do that in an hour. There's years of work becoming good enough to do it in an hour. And so you're not paying just for what they did there. You're paying them for the years of dedicated work that they've done so they can deliver that to you. And when you think about it that way, $50 is a bargain. If they can do it, $50 is a bargain for a really good, real piece of art, sort of thing. So yeah, it's good to be back on the YouTubes. It's good to chat about things, and hopefully this video was engaging and a good intro back into the channel. I've changed the name of the channel. It's now Mr. K Thinks About Stuff, which was the 2-episode miniseries. Yeah, so the Play-Doh series, I'm planning on getting back into the Play-Doh series. I don't know when. I'm not making any promises on that, but I'd like to. We'll see what happens. This video is already real long for a YouTube video, but I don't know. I kind of think of this as kind of like a video podcast. Like, the reason I'm doing it on the YouTube channel partly is because the YouTube channel is a little established. People know, a few people know about it. I might release this as just an audio podcast. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. Probably not, but I can do whatever I want with it. So I won't promise that I won't, but I won't promise that I will. But yeah, so I think of this more as kind of a video podcasty sort of thing. So that's, episode length feels more podcasty length. That's why. So, all right, there's our episode on why do stories work, and welcome back to the channel. I don't read YouTube comments very much, but I guess if you throw something down in the comments and I both see it and decide to engage with it, I'll do that. I don't tend to engage with YouTube comments much, but that's fine. Cool. I'll release another video when I release another video.